Mafia Against Evil. The city of Verona always had a dark side, but Isabella Moretti didn't know how deep it ran until she stumbled upon the secret that could destroy everything. Late one evening, Isabella sat at her desk in her modest apartment, poring over municipal financial records. Her fingers danced across her keyboard, pulling up zoning permits tied to the mayor's latest urban renewal projects. Something didn't add up. Millions of euros funneled into renovations of abandoned buildings with no visible work being done. Her investigative instincts tingled. Her heart pounded as she clicked open the latest file. A list of addresses appeared, all tied to historical sites around the city. One address caught her eye, an old warehouse on the edge of town slated for demolition. Determined to uncover the truth, Isabella grabbed her camera and headed out into the night. The warehouse loomed large under the pale moonlight, its broken windows like empty eyes watching her approach. Isabella slipped inside, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The air smelled of decay and damp wood. She noticed strange symbols carved into the walls, their shapes unfamiliar but sinister. Her heart raced. She wasn't just chasing a story anymore. She was stepping into something much darker. She froze as a rustling sound came from the darkness. Before she could move, a guard spotted her, his flashlight beam catching her in its glare. "Hey, you!" he shouted, lunging forward. Isabella stumbled back, her heart pounding. But just as the guard reached for her, a shadow moved swiftly behind him. Tony emerged, grabbing the guard and knocking him out with a single, precise blow. "Who the hell are you and what are you doing here?" a gruff voice whispered. Isabella struggled, elbowing her captor in the ribs. He let go and she spun around to face a tall, handsome man with sharp, dominant features and a long black coat that practically screamed mafia. He frowned, his eyes narrowing. "I asked you a question, lady." She hesitated, then straightened. "I'm a journalist. I'm investigating corruption in the city government." The man smirked. "Corruption? You're in the wrong place. This isn't City Hall." "And who are you?" she shot back. "Tony Russo," he said, flashing a tight grin. "I'm here on business and you—" He glanced at her camera. "You're sticking your nose where it doesn't belong." Isabella lifted her chin. "If I'm right, this place is connected to something big. If you know what's going on, maybe we can help each other." Tony hesitated. He'd been sent by his boss, Vittorio De Luca, to check out rumors of strange activity in the area. He didn't trust journalists, but there was something about Isabella's determination that intrigued him. "Fine," he said reluctantly. "But if you're lying, this ends badly for you." The next day, Tony brought Isabella to Vittorio's grand estate. The mob boss was a commanding figure, his graying hair and sharp suit exuding authority. He listened to Isabella's findings with a mix of skepticism and curiosity. "Symbols, rituals, and secret meetings?" Vittorio said, leaning back in his chair. "Sounds like a bad horror movie." "Except it's real," Isabella countered, showing him photos of the symbols and financial records. "The mayor is using public funds to support something dangerous. I think it's a cult." Vittorio's expression darkened. "A cult? What kind of cult?" "The kind that wants to summon a demon," Isabella said. The room fell silent. Tony shot her a disbelieving look, but Vittorio's jaw tightened. Finally, he stood up and crossed the room to his desk, picking up the phone. "We're not moving forward with this until I've spoken to her father," Vittorio announced. Isabella's head snapped up in surprise. "This is a dangerous game, and if we're getting involved, her family deserves to know." "You don't need my father's permission," Isabella protested. "I'm capable of making my own decisions." Vittorio held up a hand to silence her. "I don't take risks with people's lives lightly, especially the daughter of an old friend." He turned to Tony. "Get Mr. Moretti on the line. Let him know what's happening and assure him that you, my best man, are personally on it." Half an hour later, Isabella's father, a retired lawyer with deep ties to the city, arrived at the estate. He exchanged a few quiet words with Vittorio before turning to his daughter. "Bella," he said, his voice heavy with concern. "Do you trust these men?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, Papa. I wouldn't have come here if I didn't." Her father sighed and looked at Vittorio. "You'll keep her safe?" Vittorio nodded solemnly. "You have my word. Tony will be with her every step of the way." Only then did her father relent, giving a small nod of approval. Isabella bristled at the protective gesture but understood the gravity of the situation. When the meeting concluded, Vittorio turned to Tony. "Now we move," he said. "Keep her close and don't let anything happen to her." Over the next few days, Isabella and Tony worked together, uncovering more pieces of the puzzle. Isabella's research revealed that the cult's leader was none other than Mayor Giovanni Ricci, a man known for his charm and progressive policies. Meanwhile, Tony's street connections uncovered shipments of strange items, animal bones, rare herbs, and ancient texts, being delivered to various sites around the city. Their partnership was rocky at first. Isabella's meticulous methods clashed with Tony's brash, no-nonsense approach. But moments of danger drew them closer. Late one night, after narrowly escaping an ambush, they found themselves huddled together in a dimly lit safe house. Isabella shivered as adrenaline coursed through her veins. "You could have left me back there," she said, her voice trembling. Tony's eyes softened. "And let you get killed? Not a chance. You're braver than most people I know." Her cheeks flushed. "I don't know about brave. Stupid, maybe." Tony reached out, his hand brushing hers. "You're not stupid. You care about the truth. That's something worth fighting for." For a moment, the tension between them shifted, something unspoken but undeniable crackling in the air. Isabella looked away, her heart pounding for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. But as the danger escalated, their mutual respect grew. When cultists ambushed them in an alley, Tony's quick reflexes saved Isabella's life. In return, her sharp mind pieced together the cult's plan, a grand ritual timed to a rare lunar eclipse. "They're trying to summon a demon," Isabella explained, spreading out a map of the city. "These sites form a pattern. If they perform the ritual at all of them, the demon will break through." Tony frowned. Why would anyone want to do that? "Power," she said simply. The discovery of another ritual component came when Tony and Isabella intercepted a package meant for one of the cult's sites. Inside, they found an ancient dagger and a parchment with detailed instructions for a blood sacrifice. The ritual, they realized, required not just specific locations, but also a sequence of sacrifices to align with the lunar phases leading up to the eclipse. "They're escalating," Isabella said, her voice tight with fear. "This isn't just about summoning the demon. They're trying to bind it to the city's power structure." Tony gritted his teeth. "And they're not stopping until they get what they want." Their discovery put them in immediate danger. As they left the drop site, a car suddenly sped toward them, its headlights blinding. Tony grabbed Isabella, pulling her to the side just as the vehicle swerved and crashed into a stack of barrels, narrowly missing them. "That wasn't an accident," Isabella whispered, her voice shaking. "They're trying to make it look like one, but they're after us." Tony steadied her, his arms firm around her shoulders. "Hey, listen to me," he said, his voice calm despite the tension in his jaw. "We'll get through this. I won't let anything happen to you." She looked up at him, her fear melting into something else entirely. "Tony," she began, but he shook his head. "Not now. Let's get somewhere safe first." They hurried back to their safe house, their bond growing stronger with each near-death experience. But as the night deepened, so did the weight of their mission. The cult wasn't just a threat to the city. It was a threat to their lives, and they both knew the stakes were higher than ever. The night of the lunar eclipse arrived. Isabella couldn't shake the feeling of dread as they prepared to infiltrate the catacombs. Tony handed her a small knife, his fingers lingering on hers for a brief moment. "Stay close to me," he said, his voice low but firm. "I can't lose you in there." She looked up at him, surprised by the intensity in his amber eyes. "Tony, I'm not exactly easy to scare off." He gave a wry smile. "I know. That's what worries me." They weren't alone. Vittorio had sent a small group of his best men to back them up, but Tony never let Isabella out of his sight as they descended into the labyrinthine catacombs. The catacombs were a maze of damp stone corridors, the air thick with the stench of mold and decay. The chanting of the cultists grew louder as they approached the central chamber, where flickering torchlight cast eerie shadows on the walls. Isabella gripped the knife Tony had given her, her heart hammering in her chest. The chamber was vast, dominated by a massive pentagram, etched into the floor and surrounded by glowing runes. At its center, Mayor Ricci stood, holding the ancient dagger they had intercepted earlier, his voice rising in a chilling incantation. Around him, hooded figures swayed, their chants harmonizing with his. Tony signaled Vittorio's men to fan out and take positions. He turned to Isabella, his voice low. "Stay close and follow my lead. If things go south, you run. Got it?" She nodded, swallowing her fear. "Got it." As the ritual reached its peak, the runes began to glow brighter, and a swirling vortex of energy formed above the pentagram. The demon's outline became visible, its fiery eyes piercing through the void. Tony moved swiftly, firing his gun to disrupt the cultists' focus, while Vittorio's men engaged the guards. Isabella darted toward the pentagram, her eyes locked on the artifact at its center, a grotesque idol radiating dark energy. She remembered the parchment's instructions. Destroying the idol would disrupt the ritual. Gathering her courage, she sprinted forward, dodging a cultist's grasp and plunging her knife into the idol. A deafening roar filled the chamber as the vortex collapsed, the demon's form dissipating into the void. The ground shook violently, and debris rained down from the ceiling. "Isabella!" Tony shouted, running toward her. But before he could reach her, a collapsing beam struck him, pinning him to the ground. Isabella rushed to his side, her hands trembling as she tried to lift the beam. "Tony, stay with me!" she cried, tears streaming down her face. "Bella, get out of here," he groaned, blood seeping from a gash on his forehead. "You have to. Finish this." "I'm not leaving you," she yelled, summoning every ounce of strength to push the beam off him. With a final, desperate effort, she succeeded, dragging him to safety just as the chamber collapsed entirely. When Tony woke up, the sterile white walls of a hospital room greeted him. His body ached, but the sight of Isabella sitting beside him brought a faint smile to his lips. "Hey," he murmured, his voice hoarse. "You okay?" She looked up, her eyes red from crying but filled with relief. "You idiot. You almost got yourself killed." "Had to keep you out of trouble?" he joked weakly. Isabella leaned closer shyly, her hand finding his. "You saved me, Tony, and this time I saved you. We make a good team." His fingers tightened around hers. "Yeah, we do." For a moment, the world outside faded away. Isabella pressed her forehead to his, her voice barely a whisper. "Don't you dare scare me like that again." Tony chuckled softly, wincing at the pain. "No promises, Bella, but I'll try." Tony's gaze softened as a mischievous grin spread across his face. "You know, Bella," he said, his voice teasing. "For someone so fearless, you're awfully easy to steal from." She tilted her head. "Steal from? What are you talking about?" Before she could finish, Tony leaned in and stole a cheeky kiss, leaving her momentarily stunned and her cheeks flushing crimson. The door to the hospital room burst open, and in walked Isabella's father and Vittorio, both halting in their tracks at the sight before them. Vittorio raised an eyebrow, smirking. "Well, looks like our best man is recovering nicely." Isabella's father groaned, throwing his hands in the air. "I leave you alone for 5 minutes, Bella." Tony's chuckle turned into a wince as he held his side, but his grin remained. Timing could have been better, but hey, no regrets. Isabella buried her face in her hands, half laughing, half mortified. "You're impossible, Tony." And as the first rays of dawn broke through the hospital window, their hands remained clasped, a silent vow of trust and something more, even as the room filled with laughter and the echoes of their unconventional family.